Honourable members, prayers. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to look with favor upon this Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Grant that it may perform its high duty as in thy sight. Give divine guidance to the President of the Republic. Endow members of Parliament and ministers of state with discernment and vision, integrity and courage, that through the labors of government, this land and the people may be well and truly served, and their good purposes for the common human life be realized in our midst. O God, grant us a vision of our country, fair as it might be, country of righteousness, where none shall wrong his neighbor, country of plenty, where evil and poverty shall be done away with, country of brotherhood, where all success shall be founded on service, and honor shall be given to the deserving, country of peace, where government shall rest on the will of the people and the love for the common good. Bless the efforts of those who struggle to make this vision living reality. Inspire and strengthen our people that they may give time, thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Other members will commence with the correction of votes and proceedings of Friday, 26 January 2018. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. In the absence of any corrections, the proceedings of Friday, the 26th of January 2018 is hereby adopted as the true record of proceedings of that day. Now we shall take the proceedings of Saturday, the 27th of January. Yes, Honorable Deputy Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want your guidance on this order 13.2. Whenever the House is informed by the clerk at table of the unavoidable absence of Mr. Speaker, the first Deputy Speaker shall perform the duties and exercise the authority of Mr. Speaker in relation to all proceedings of the House, and Mr. Speaker shall resume the chair without any further communication to the House. Mr. Speaker, we've just begun, and you've entered, and our team members must be told something about the whereabouts of Mr. Speaker, and this is where I want your guidance on.
Yes, Honorable Leaders, do you want to comment on this issue he has raised? I thought that on Saturday, I read to the hearing of everybody that Mr. Speaker is unavoidably absent as the acting president. And for that reason, the first Deputy Speaker will take over. It is proceedings we are continuing with. So there's no need to announce it further. Yes, Honorable Majority Leader.
Speaker, the Honorable Member has read to us Order 13.2, which reads, whenever the House is informed by the clerk at table of the unavoidable absence of the Speaker, the first Deputy Speaker shall perform the duties and exercise the authority of Mr. Speaker in relation to all proceedings of the House until Mr. Speaker resumes the chair without any further communication to the House. The Speaker, the operative word is absence. What is absence in this case? The Speaker, I don't respond to interjections. Mr. Speaker, the operative word is absence. What is meant by absence? Absence from where? Is it the chamber? Is it the presence of Parliament? Is it outside this country? Mr. Speaker, I believe that is where we should address our minds to. Because, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, what we just did, the function that Parliament performed in respect of Article 60, when it talks about absence, is construed to mean absence from Ghana. Mr. Speaker, so I believe we must, as a House, come to some determination on this. Because we have had instances where the Speaker has been in Parliament, in his office, doing his business, and it has occasioned the first Deputy Speaker or the second Deputy Speaker, as the case may be, to come and preside, and announcements have not been made. The Speaker can cite numerous examples from the time of the Right Honourable Justice Joyce Bamford, where the Honourable Dua Jahu, as a then first Deputy Speaker, had to preside. No announcements were made. Mr. Speaker, this House is replete with numerous instances where this has happened. That is why I'm saying to us that we should determine for ourselves what we mean by absence. And when we come to that determination, then we'll see where we are. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I've seen the majority leader labor to interpret unavoidable absence. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the Speaker have assumed high responsibility performing functions of the President whilst the President is away. But Mr. Speaker, the operative word, to quote you, is on Saturday, did the clerk report to this House? Oh, I'm coming to read the 13. Whenever the House is informed by the clerk at the table. So if on Saturday the clerk at the table did not, it's only proper that today it is done. Nothing more. You don't need to invoke interpreting absence. Absence is absence. Because, Mr. Speaker, you preside over the sittings of the House. The Speaker presides. So whenever the Speaker is not presiding and you have a first Deputy Speaker who in his heart qualifies now as Vice President somehow, because there's a vacuum arising out of a medical leave. Arising out of a medical leave. There is.
Let me observe that I know how keen you are to have certain clauses of the Constitution interpreted. But on this occasion, I wish us to restrict ourselves to the study of this and deal with it, because that is within our domain.
So, Mr. Speaker, it's just for the clerk Fortunately for us, he is your key advisor on the rules and the standing orders. On Saturday, was that done? No. Today, must it be done? I believe so. Then we cut a long story short. It is not for the majority leader to want to explain what absence means. If you were in Swami this morning and you are not here, you are absent. It's not whether you have gone to Tamale or you are returning from Bekwai or to Sefi. You are absent. The Speaker presides over this House. So, Mr. Speaker, the clerk should do what is appropriate. Then you take your rightful place as you have already taken. There is no matter in issue. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are we still agreeing on other 13? Yes, Honorable Majority Leader. I've heard the Minority Leader. I'll hear you.
Mr. Speaker, the Minority Leader has made a categorical statement that if I am in Swami, I'm not here, I'm absent. Mr. Speaker, that is too simplistic. If I'm in Swami, as part of a committee that is doing some work there, Mr. Speaker, you see where he is. So I may not necessarily be absent. I may not necessarily be absent. Thank you very much.
Yes, Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's very interesting listening to the Majority Leader. First, there have been several arguments in this House where members, including Mr. Speaker, your good self, traveling on behalf of Parliament to do either a committee work or outside, and you've been marked absent here. There are instances where members are sitting in the committee rooms because they didn't come into the chamber and they did not go to the mails room to sign, are marked absent. Mr. Speaker, I want to refer all of us attention to Standing Order 13.2. And Mr. Speaker, it says, whenever the House is informed by the clerk at the table of the unavoidable absence of Mr. Speaker, the first Deputy Speaker shall perform the duties and exercise the authority of Mr. Speaker in relation to all proceedings of the House until Mr. Speaker resumes the chair. So the absence is absence from the chair, not absence outside the country. Yes. Because it says until he resumes the chair. So the absence is from the chair. Unless otherwise, we all admit that our standing orders have not made elaborate provisions with regards to when the Speaker is acting as a president, what do we do? But to say that the absence doesn't mean when he's not in the chamber, I beg to differ. His absence from the chair is what it means the Speaker is not available, and we need to be told the whereabouts of Mr. Speaker. And it's done once until he comes back. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I believe when I speak, people should listen and listen attentively. I have never said what he's attributing to me. I raised the issue, and I said as a House, you should come to some determination. So if you're not listening, don't construe what you were thinking as what I said. With respect. I said we should come to some determination on that. What is the import of absence in this case? That's all that I said. And, Mr. Speaker, with respect, let my colleague apply himself to the meaning of sitting. Apply yourself to the meaning of sitting. So, and that is, again, I've raised that matter before with respect to what is meant by sitting. Would it include committee sittings? Or is the sitting there meant to imply a sitting of the committee of the whole? Or is it committee sittings? That is what we should look at. My own thinking, though, is that the sitting there really refers to committee of the whole and not the other committee sittings. But on occasions, the presiding officers have ruled for it to include committee sittings. And that is what makes it confusing. So we should, again in the review orders, the Honorable Second Deputy Speaker would tell you that I've raised this at that level. That should be very specific in the meaning of sitting as contained there. If indeed it meant to include committee sittings, then the person at a committee sitting cannot be construed to be absent from parliamentary sitting. So we should look at that, all those things, before we come to some unilateral decisions and conclusions as we have made. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Honourable members, I think I've had enough of this. If you look at the proceedings we were just about to consider. Oh, very well. I'll hear the Second Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the definition of sitting is very clear. It's talking about, but it's not exclusive. It has extended to other situations where sitting could be construed for the purpose of the functions of the House. That's why it says includes a period during which Parliament is sitting continuously without adjournment, and a period during which it is in committee. It there is referring to Parliament, and Parliament in committee. And the only time Parliament is in committee as a House is when the House is in the committee of the whole. And so that is where that definition is. But with regard to Order 13, clearly the side note says temporary or continued absence of Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think the absence there is absence from the chair, because clause 13.2 is clear. Whenever the House is informed by the clerk at the table of the unavoidable absence of Mr. Speaker, the first Deputy Speaker shall perform the duties and exercise the authority of Mr. Speaker in relation to all proceedings of the House until Mr. Speaker resumes the chair without any further communication to the House. Resumes the chair, not resumes his functions, which goes beyond presiding in the House. And so that is talking about absence from the chair. And this is referring to at the beginning of the sitting. At the beginning of the sitting, what had just happened this morning, clearly we have done it a number of times. The clerk is very well aware of this. I think that if it's not done, it might be an oversight. But it's been done a number of times. And there's nothing wrong with this. Members will need to know why the Speaker is not present to commence proceedings before handing over to the first or second Deputy Speaker. I think that is what this whole standing order is talking about. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks very much. Yes. Hello, members. I guess everybody has a copy of the votes and proceedings for Saturday, 27 February. If you look at page 8, item number 5, up to page 6, the reason why Mr. Speaker is not here was announced, and it is recorded in the votes and proceedings. Unless you insist that because it did not come out of the mouth of the clerk, it is not an announcement. Otherwise, nobody is in doubt as to why Mr. Speaker is not in the chair at this time. And the record will bear me out. So To the best of my knowledge, the reason Mr. Speaker is not presiding now was formally communicated to the House, and indeed from Saturday, I was in the chair as the first Deputy Speaker, and until the Speaker resumes the seat, I will be in the chair. Let's proceed. Page 1. Page 1. 27th. It has been distributed. We are finished with 26th, so we are going to 27th. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Honourable members, the votes and proceedings of Saturday, 27th January 2018, is hereby adopted as a true record of proceedings. Honourable members, we also have the official report for Wednesday, 29th November 2017. Very well. In the absence of any corrections, the official report of Wednesday, 29th November 2017 is hereby adopted as the true proceedings of the House. Item number 3, statements. Honourable members would recall that last Friday, the Honourable Minority Leader raised the issue of the head of the births and deaths registry on names they do not permit to be used on our birth certificates. Mr. Speaker directed that the Minister for Local Government should come as the sector minister responsible for the births and deaths registry should come and explain to the House the authority of the head of births and deaths registry to prescribe the use of certain names. She is here and she is ready, so I invite the Minister for Local Government to come and make a statement on the matter. Honourable Minister, you may now make your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I appear before this August House to respond to issues and questions raised about the registration of names by the Births and Deaths Registry, which is a department under the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, 24th January 2018, the acting registrar of the Births and Deaths Registry granted an interview to the Heritage, a newspaper on concerns raised by some parents regarding the registration of names, particularly names which began with prefaces and titles. The said interview and the publication by the Heritage newspaper on Thursday, 21st January 2018, generated controversies and major discussions about the registration of names by the Births and Deaths Registry. Mr. Speaker, the Registration of Births and Deaths Act 1965, Act 301, provides for the registration of births, fetal deaths, and deaths, and makes provision for burial grounds. The registration of births goes with the registration of name of the person. Section 41 of the Act provides that the minister, by legislative instrument, make regulations for carrying into effect the provisions of the Act. The registration of births and deaths regulations 1970, LI 653, provides prescribed particulars for birth report form in the schedule, and also directs the registrar of births and deaths to develop instruction manual to the staff of registries for their guidance in making entries in the registers of births and deaths and in the completion of forms. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, the registry developed standard operating procedure, which is a body of written instructions issued for guidance of staff and field workers of the registry. Indeed, in developing the SOP, that's the standard operating procedure, SOP, the registry referred to previous manuals and other practices. The registry referred to previous manuals and other practices elsewhere and publications by some prominent Ghanaians, e.g. Omanye Abba, a document by A. Amati, and the African Heritage of the African Republic of Ghana by Osafo K. Osei. The current version of the SOP, launched in July 2009, provides under Chapter 3 specific instructions on what to capture in the registration of the name of a child. Section 3.3 of the SOP deals with particulars of the child and states that titles should not be added to the names, e.g. Reverend, Alhaji, Doctor, Colonel, Nana, Junior, Senior, and so on, among others. Mr. Speaker, considering that the SOP serves as an operational guideline for the registration of births and deaths, coupled with the sentiments expressed by the public, the acting registrar of Births and Deaths Registry has been directed to review the SOP and further directed that names such as Nana, Ni, Papa, and so on, as given by the parents, should be accepted for registration. The registry should perhaps be concerned with just official titles, such as Reverend, Doctor, Mr., Miss, Mrs., Honorable, and so on. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development will very soon bring a bill to Parliament on registration of births and deaths, which will address some of these controversies and to reflect and accommodate present trends and societal developments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I'll admit 3 comments from other side, 2 comments from other side, and then the leaders can comment if they so wish. Yes, Honorable former Minister for Local Government.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. When she said the SOP was developed in 2009, indeed, it was during my time, but I didn't see it. But I think that this whole argument that was generated, I believe the explanation she has given clarifies the issues, because many times when you are traveling and you have to buy your tickets, instead of saying Joseph Yelechire, they will say honorable as part of the name. When you get to the other side, they see honorable. What is honorable? The titles, we all like them. But to be putting titles before names, when indeed the document itself has a specified number of letters it can take for a name, it's not good. For purposes for which this is to be done, you must distinguish between the name, a given name, and a title. So what is a given name? It's because we have not been practicing and documenting these things properly. What was the day the person was named? What was the given name? Sometimes the people add the other names. When you add those names and you want that to reflect in the registry, you are creating a little more of confusion. Because if, as we all know, our president is called Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, Nana is part of his name, but it's also a title. So sometimes people wonder whether we should even call him Nana Addo or President, because Nana and President have the same equivalence in terms of title. Now, what I'm saying in effect is that all these years that he wanted to be president, it is because he was given the title Nana, and he wanted to live it up to become president. You understand? So I believe that this explanation that the minister has given clarifies the issue. But I will urge the minister to review and bring to this house the law itself, the birth and death registry. Indeed, it is outmoded, and also to computerize. The efforts I was trying to make sure that we have the vital statistics and a basic document that generates all our statistics about human beings in Ghana. It should continue to pursue that, because I remember the African Development Bank was willing to support us to develop that database. And for everybody who is born in Ghana to have his name, who the person is, to have his name on the register. And it is from the register we can tell how many people we really need to develop or program we plan for, how many schools we are to build. Everybody, if everybody is registered in the villages and in the towns, we should be able to program how many schools we should build. So it will also help the statistics department to compile accurate information. So I urge that you do so, and more so to make sure that this SOP is not left in the SOP where anybody can tinker with it. It should be in the form of a regulation, so that the House will look at it and it will be a permanent arrangement, so that the opportunity does not arise for another officer who, out of enthusiasm, may say things that are not appropriate. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first, I want to thank the Minister for Local Government for coming to the House to clarify the issue. Before these facts were known, Mr. Speaker, if you heard the way the people were describing the gentleman at birth and death, you would have thought that the man was a criminal. But he was doing the right thing under the law. And so I want to urge members of this House, even though the matter looked like it was wrong, we should have done our homework to check the proper SOP to make sure that he was right before trying to condemn him. He's not here to defend himself. He cannot be here on the floor of the House. But clearly, he was on the right path. And those who were attempting to condemn him were on the wrong path. And I think the proper thing is for those people to sincerely apologize to him. And as the minister said, when they come up with the right regulation, I agree with my colleague, rather than hiding it under SOPs, it should be part of the regulation so that in the future, people will not make the mistake they did make. But I think that those who were thinking that he was on the wrong path should, on the floor of the House, take advantage and apologize to him that they didn't know any better. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Ablekuma South.
Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Honourable Minister for coming to the floor to explain the issue. But I think that the issue at hand is dealing with names. And when it comes to names, when you look at certain parts of our country, for example, let me use the Greater Accra region. Let me use my cousin Nilante. Nilante is a name. It is not a title. The Ni there is a name. It's part of the name. I have a daughter, Nadensua Vanderpool. Nadensua is a name. Now, if in future my daughter will be made a chief or a Nana of Otudohum, she will be called Nadensua Vanderpool. At that point, she is Nadensua as a queen mother. So we need to separate when it is a name and when it is a title. But in our tradition, in the Gan state, if you name somebody a name, if I have a child today, a boy, and I name him Nilante Vanderpool, it is his name. You cannot refuse to register that name. You cannot. It is part of the name. You can't say just Nante Vanderpool. In the Lante Jangwe tradition of Accra, Nilante Vanderpool is a name. And so, if the SOP is referring to titles, I understand and I accept that. But if the gentleman who explained it in the interview correlated this to mean that titles, for us in the Greater Accra region, it is part of our name. My father was Ni Pakoti Vanderpool. One point in his life, he became Ni Pakoti as Adontihini of Otudohum. They are separate things. As a child, he was named Ni Pakoti. Then he became Ni Pakoti as a chief. So when he became Ni Pakoti as a chief, if you want to register him, it's a different thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I'll take one more. Yes, Honourable Member for Tamale. No.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, my contribution is rather brief, and I wish the Minister will take into consideration in guiding the birth and death registry in coming up with a new SOP, because as she has also indicated in her presentation, and other contributions have gone to show, there are times that a title can also be a given name. So if you put it in the SOP that titles should not be registered, it becomes a bit ambiguous. When a parent decides to give a title as a name. For example, the minister, when she was speaking, talked of honorable as a title. But honorable is also an English word, which has meaning. If a parent decides he wants his child to grow out to be honorable, an honorable person in society, like we have Peace. People name their daughters Peace or their sons Peace. Yeah. And we have, so I can decide that because I want the name to have a meaning, and so I want to call my child honorable. At that point, it is a title that has become a given name. And it will become difficult for an SOP to say that as a parent, I am not allowed to name my child honorable. When I can name my child Peace, I can name my child Justice. I can name my child Good Luck. So I think that it has to be very well couched so that we don't even have problems in the future. If we say titles should not be should not be registered, we will run into difficulties again in future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I'll give the last one here to Honorable Member for Filson North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to
Honorable Members, order.
Also contribute to the statement. Mr. Speaker, I would like to state a position of the law as regards an act of parliament and regulations emanating from the act of parliament vis-à-vis guidelines issued by an institution, and for that matter, the Birth and Death Registry. I haven't fully read the statement because I've just been given a copy of the statement. But Mr. Speaker, the case of Professor Kokua Sari and the Attorney General and General Legal Counsel, a case which went to the Supreme Court as a result of imposition of exams and interview imposed on law graduates from the various law faculties in Ghana. The Supreme Court made it abundantly clear that whenever a statute exists and regulations are issued from the statute, you cannot use guidelines to override either the statute or the regulations. Mr. Speaker, that is the position of the law. And if these operating procedures were issued to derogate from the Act or from the regulation, then the position being submitted or espoused by the Registrar of Births and Deaths, Mr. Speaker, is not tenable in law. But if these guidelines, Mr. Speaker, if these guidelines are foundationed upon either the acts or the regulation, then that position that the Registrar of Births and Deaths is espousing, Mr. Speaker, is perfectly right within the law. This is the position, Mr. Speaker, I will want to establish. Thank you.
What is the position of a guideline? Is it in the nature of a law? If a guideline is not passed by Parliament, what is its value?
There's no value.
So whatever it is that the agency wanted to do, their limit is the regulations. So nothing can be enforced against the people of the country unless it is in an act or a regulation of one side or the other. And I think that point should be very clear. Now I'm coming to the leaders. That's what we agreed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I have a copy of the Minister's statement, and Mr. Speaker, like you yourself espouse your position on the subject, we have enjoyed members' contribution to it, except Minister, your opening paragraph. Next time, it's only fair that you recognize that you are here because it was a request of Mr. Speaker in Parliament for you to be here as a follow-up. I'm not sure you just voluntarily decided to come and apprise this House on the matter, but it's okay. You have made reference to the Heritage newspaper. Mr. Speaker, names matter. And names matter because names have religious, cultural significance. And depending upon the time of your birth, sometimes the circumstance of your birth. Therefore, names are very important. And Mr. Speaker, let me share this philosophical view. Birth and death. In fact, I'm told by a sociologist that birth is only a messenger of death. When they give birth to you, they are preparing you for death. And Mr. Speaker, why it's important that we keep this record? Citizenship is fundamental to the work of the births and registrar. And therefore, we should not take this matter lightly. So, Minister, you are encouraged to take appropriate steps to revise the law. Citizenship, who is a citizen of Ghana, and that qualifies persons to aspire to sit where you sit tomorrow. And therefore, when there are disagreements about their names, it can affect that right conferred on every Ghanaian citizen. Mr. Speaker, cultural importance of names. Minister, I'll use you as an example. You come from the Pana Langile in Mamprogo, the warrior group of Mamprogo. You are aware of that. And properly speaking, we could be calling you Yikpan Pa. Yikpan Pa. She knows. That is her right.
I kindly explain that to the rest of us. That's what our rule says.
She is a strong warrior. They bear the sword of Mamprogo. And therefore, we could decide to name her Yikpan Pa, the Pani referring to the sword, and the Pa because she's a woman. So the woman with the sword, they are supposed to be the warriors. So, Mr. Speaker, when I say culturally, like my mother is Mariama. Now, if I give birth and I want to name the daughter after my mother, in Dabani, I can't call my mother Mariama. I cannot. It does not show respect. So I call her Mariama. Mariama. The my mother Mariama. And then somebody sees us births and dares to tell me that I can't call my daughter Mariama. That is my mother. But in Yapa, that is it. So, Mr. Speaker, I've just gone to my part of the world with her of the cultural significance of.
Now you go to vulgarism.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, again to minister and births and deaths. Religiously, you play a significant role. And minister, again today, I will encourage you. In this country, data on birth and death is problematic. Maybe probably you should be using mobile technology for us to register births and probably even register deaths. Because, Mr. Speaker, the religious significance, it is only during birth and during death that you are helpless. What are the two circumstances? When you are being born to the world, you are picked and put down. When you are being sent out of the world, you are put down, helpless. That is why at that moment, somebody is assisting with your detail and that matter. So, Minister, I hold with me here Registration of Births and Deaths Act 1965, Act 301, and Section 40 provides the minister by legislative instrument. And Mr. Speaker, I couldn't agree more with the lucid argument of the chairman of the Committee on Constitutional Legal. That is germane to the argument we are making. So, Minister for Monetary Evaluation, you got it wrong. We don't owe the registrar an apology, and nobody should apologize to the registrar. After all, even listening to the minister, he has come to accept, Mr. Speaker, you contributed to the debate. Minister have accepted the position we collectively took. Me, Nana, who says, Adia, is somebody born an Alaji? Until you go to Mecca, so how can you be given birth and you go and say, I'm Alaji Idrisu? Which Alaji? Which Alaji? So,
Registrar of Births and Deaths, we won't argue with you on this matter. On those times, the Reverend, when you bought a Reverend, when they were picking you helpless as a baby, you came with a Bible in your hand to a Reverend. No. So those titles, Alhaji, Reverend, Mr. Professor, a CV with Professor, we agree with you. But the one the Honorable former Mayor of Accra, our Honorable colleague, Honorable Vendor, have raised is Ni Nana Adudankwa, part of his name. And in Mapruge again, Nam. When you hear, Mr. Speaker, I just share one which is very familiar with. Sando Sampa. When you come as a new birth, you are called Sando because you are a stranger. At that time, you have not been baptized and given a name. Some have grown even with the name of Sando, some with Sampa, referring to the male and female where appropriate. So, Mr. Speaker, we agree. But the argument of the chairman of Constitutional Legal is that, Minister, let's respect the hierarchy of the laws. An act of parliament is superior to a regulation, and a regulation is superior to guidelines. And we in parliament will never recognize guidelines. We will not. Therefore, we are saying that based on the Parent Act, bring us regulations, which will come and pass through our house here at the Committee on Subsidiary Legislation. Then the people of Ghana know through their representatives that if we err, they are guided that it was brought to the knowledge of their elected representatives. So I should commend you at least for a very timely and appropriate response. We look forward to a revision of the legislation that which we would support you, but we think that what the Honorable Lecturer mentioned, given names, it does not lie within the registrar to determine a name for a parent, whether mother or father. So, Mr. Registrar, that is not your mandate. And I'm not sure ever any parliament will give you that mandate. It's the moral authority of a father. After that, those struggles at night to give birth, and you want to determine for him how the person should be named. So, Mr. Speaker, we should commend you and commend Mr. Speaker when we brought the matter for discussion together with the majority leader. You had no hesitation. This is how we must get our public institutions to work and work effectively and functionally. Mr. Speaker, finally, this House must resource the births and deaths registry very well. We must. So thank you, Common Fund, give them some. When the Common Fund comes, give them some. They need resources to work.
They generate a lot of money, so they should retain the money to do their work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, an IGF formula. So, Mr. Speaker, with this comment, let me commend the Minister at least for timeously and appropriately appearing before this House at your request and providing clarity, very good clarity. So there is no doubt that he knows that he has no mandate to remove Ni or Nana or Na. Reverend Alhaji, Mr. Professor, acquired after birth. But it is not the registrar's responsibility to determine for a father or mother how the son or the daughter be named. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I believe colleagues have really extrapolated on the issues that we raised last week and have very little to add. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the Honourable Minister for responding so timeously to our request to her to appear before us. Mr. Speaker, the Minister informed us that the communication from Parliament had not even reached her, and yet she decided on her own volition, given the circumstances of the times, to appear before us today
to offer appropriate response. Mr. Speaker, so we expect our ministers to act with such degree of alacrity as the minister has exhibited. So once again, I'm profoundly and eternally grateful to her. Mr. Speaker, but I look at the response that is given to us. The fourth paragraph, if I should read again, the Registration of Birth and Deaths Act 1965, Act 301, provides for the registration of births, fetal deaths, and deaths, and makes provision for burial grounds. Mr. Speaker, fetal deaths, does it include induced deaths of the fetus? Mr. Speaker, if that is so...
that is criminal, so it cannot be part of what the law recognized. Induced ones are criminal, and they cannot be what the law recognized. The law cannot recognize crime. So what you have in mind, termination of pregnancy, cannot be recognized by the law if it is not done in the course of...
Mr. Speaker, death is death. Death indeed is death. And as to whether it is natural or unnatural, accidental or unaccidental, Mr. Speaker, it is death. And so this matter about fetal deaths should engage the attention of all. I hope you are not calling me, including somebody whose face I'm looking at, and another board member whose face I'm looking at. Mr. Speaker, the issue about the significance of names we have listened to, representing cultural identity, traditional identity, religious identity, and even the place and circumstance of birth. Mr. Speaker, we've mentioned this. I think the problem had to do with the literal interpretation given to the last but one paragraph, that the last but three in the response of the minister. And I'm quoting, titles should not be added to the names, e.g. Reverend, Alaji, Dr., Colonel, Nana, Junior, Senior, etc., among others. Because the issue that we raised in the House, as the minority leader has reiterated, is this, that some of these titles have become part of the formal names given to children. For instance, Nana. And in our own case, the Speaker, the other day I read some of the names here. We have Nana Ayo Efriyi. That was a name that was given to him at birth. Nana Ekua Owusu Efriyi. That was the name given to her at birth. So the Nana is part of her name. My own Nana is not part of my name. Recently acquired. It's not part of my name. But Nana Amwako, the Nana in Amwako, is part of his name, given to him at birth, is his official name. Nana Dokua Esiama Ajeyi. And I also mentioned Baba Benson Tongo. Baba really is father. And yet, the Baba has become part of his name. In fact, he was named Baba Benson Tongo, even though Baba in reality is father. Mr. Speaker, there are people who are called Ajiman. What is the meaning of Ajiman? Ajiman is a savior of nations. That's a literal translation. It was acquired by a king And now people name their children Ajiman. You cannot say that Ajiman is not his name, and that originally it was acquired. You cannot say so. We have Nana Eya, Nana Eya, Ebenezer ni na Nate, Nana Ameni Ampomafo, ni Joseph ni Laye Afote Agbo. Ni Laye, the ni is part of his name. The Speaker, that is a distinction that we sought to make, and that we said to the registrar that by his insistence, you get these wrong. Because some means, some nas, some nanas are part of official names given to children at birth. Emmanuel Ni Okanlai, Betty Nana Ifua Crosby Mensah, Gifty Tina Na Ayele Mensah, Andrew Kofi Ejapa. Ejapa is good father. Ejapa is good father. And yet, Ejapa was given to the person at birth. How can anybody sitting in his office say that Ejapa is good father? It shouldn't be part of your name. It's a title. It should not be part of your name. These are the matters that we are concerned with. There is an honorable person called Queen Star, whether he's a star of the Queens or whatever. That is the name that she's acquired, or perhaps given to her at birth. Can anybody say that this is a ridiculous name, so you should not have this name included as part of your official name? It cannot be. Mr. Speaker, there is Egwene Lante Vanderpoel and many others. Mr. Speaker, so I believe that was what we said to ourselves. It is not as if we took the registrar to cleaners, but we said to him that is giving a literal interpretation to the SOP. Again, the position of the SOP has been made known to us by the chairman of the Constitutional, Legal, and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, that it cannot supersede the Act itself. It cannot supersede the regulations. Mr. Speaker, perhaps where we are, the minister should consider the updating the regulations and indeed streamlining it to reflect the sentiments and then submit same to Parliament so that it will be in tandem with the parent law and that the instructions from the office do not then have the effect of contradicting or even conflicting the sensibilities of Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, there are names that one ordinarily, or in a few years back, would have been considered ridiculous. And yet people are acquiring them and giving such names to their children. Today we have Hallelujah. And I know of two people who are called Hallelujah. Mr. Speaker, the person has decided to name.
You know somebody called Hallelujah?
Yes.
I also know. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, praise the Lord. Mr. Speaker, so the person decides to name the child Hallelujah. Who are you to say that the person should not name the child Hallelujah? Not having known the toils of the couple before maybe they were able to conceive and give birth. The Speaker, this giving identity to the product of very excruciating nocturnal business should not be. Mr. Speaker, I'm being told that it cannot only be nocturnal. I agree with the member for Otafu. Yes. Excruciating. I know the ordeal you went through. The Honorable Second Deputy Speaker, I know the ordeal you went through. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe where we are, we really need to get our act together. And I think because of the purpose for which the birds and bears should serve, the outfit should be liaising closely now with the National Identification Authority, in order that we have a document that will really reflect the figure that we have as our national population, so it doesn't get diluted. That's because it's important that the two outfits liaise and get it right for us. With these few words, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity granted.
These were not few. I was going to be this crowd here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to add a word to what has already been said, and to draw the attention of the House to a few other suggestions that could be carried on board in the review of the airline. Mr. Speaker, as stated, those names might not necessarily mean titles. In my language, Na is chief. Na is also a twin. So you have Na and Ziema. The Na is the one that comes last, because in essence, he has sent the messenger ahead. And so the Na will be the person's name, not just a title. And so you can have Na and then another name. So they should not just see that as a title. Mr. Speaker, somebody could also be given a name, and the person will grow up not to like that name and can change the name. That is also permitted. And so in my area, when you are born on a market day, you can be called Dana. That's the chief of the market. That's your name, Dana. You can grow up and decide that I don't want that name, and drop it and take another name. And so in developing the form should be that comprehensive to have name, given name, maiden name, and all those details, so that the person can decide that this is the name I want. I wasn't given Kingsford. Kingsford I got when I was in senior high. My local name is Sumana. That is good. Those of you who say Sumani, I'm not Sumani. I am Sumana. Yes, not Sumani. My father is Bagbin and not Bagbin. And I was baptized Alban. Those of you who know St. Alban. Those of you who are Catholics will know. It's a Catholic saint, St. Alban.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
And so my name...
Yes, Honorable Kodo is the leader out of order. Is it out of order?
Mr. Speaker, the second Deputy Speaker was telling us that he went to senior high school.
Very well made. Very well
I
made.
just want him to confirm which type of senior. He should clearly indicate which secondary school he attended.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I think you need to correct yourself.
Well, I don't know whether it's old school, but it used to be called secondary school, but now it's senior high school. And I'm speaking today, not yesterday. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to add that they should redevelop the form to be so comprehensive that it could capture the sense of this discussion, and even they could exploit more. We need comprehensive data, particularly so as many tribes are migrating away from their traditions and adopting others. And I recall that there's been a serious call on my friends and brothers of the Muslim religion to try to add their traditional names. If not, we have too many Alas and Idrisus. Too many of them without any other name, and I have traveled with some to the Arab world. And when they say they are called Alas and Idrisu, they ask them to add their traditional name. What is your traditional name? And then they don't have any traditional name. And the people are surprised. Because you need to have that. You need to maintain your traditional identity. Very important. It will not take anything away from your spirituality. And so, Mr. Speaker, let's also add that the form be better developed so that it could capture the true Ghanaian. Ghanaian is a unique human being, very different from, you say your name is, now I got to know that the majority leader has got Nana in addition. When I was with him in Kumasi to celebrate his 20 years, I'm aware he was giving Sumpahine. I didn't know that he has added Nana to it. But that one, I have not seen it in his name. He's now telling us. And so he may have to go to the births and deaths to swear an affidavit to add that to his name. I thank you very much.
Very well. Honorable Minister, I don't know whether you want to say anything else, but before you go, let me draw your attention to something which may have caused the challenges we are facing now. From your statement, the last paragraph, you say that there's already an LI 653, and instead of developing the guidelines and making it part of the regulations, you just said in the LI that somebody else should develop an SOP. That, for me, is where the challenge is, because Parliament gives you the power to do the subsidiary legislation, and then you also give somebody else power to do something else without bringing it to Parliament for it to pass as a law. Probably if the SOP was part of the regulations, then this assembly of Ghanaians, every sector of the country is represented here. Then all those things would have come out, and we may not have the challenges. So I suggest that rather than making them operational procedures or whatever, let it be part of the subsidiary legislation. Then you have members considering them sufficiently and assisting to develop guidelines which will not generate any more furores. I'll hear your last comment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've listened and I've noted all the contributions, and importantly, in doing the new regulations, we should be looking at the socio-cultural context. We should see the link to the national identification process, and also look at the design of the form to accommodate various changes. But I also like to add that if someone changes the name, you would have to go through the process and gazette it. And with that gazetted name, that instrument, you can go to births and deaths
to register the name that you have, whatever name it is, whether it's Nana or Ni, whatever title you've added. Once it's gazetted, you have to take it to the registrar, and the registrar will comply. The overriding point is when parents decide on a name for a child, the registrar should comply. If you can cancel the parent if you think the name is on, but you cannot compel the parent otherwise. The registrar will have to comply. We'll therefore work on the law, we'll bring the law. After that, we'll accompany it with the regulations and get the support of members to have the kind of naming regime or process that we want for our country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. This should bring the curtain down on this matter. Yeah, Honorable Minister, now you're now discharged. You came voluntarily, but I'll discharge you. Very well. Do we have time to take one more statement before we do the public business? Those who prepare statements on Liberia, very well. Honorable Abama, you read yours. After that, Honorable Okujeto. And is Reverend Intim here? Is not very well. They will take the two of you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this statement is on the election of President Weah as President of Liberia. The election of George Weah as the 24th President of Liberia indicates a certain paradigm shift in the contemporary elections of Liberia. It also illustrates the coming of age of the electorate indicated in their resolve to exercise their civil responsibilities and participate fully in the democratic process of their country. Though Liberia is Africa's oldest independent republic at 170 years, it experienced a recurrent civil war for 14 years, which severely affected the peace and stability of the country, and the Ebola virus in 2014 to 2016, which together claimed thousands of lives. This is not the first time President Weah, who is a former footballer, has run for president, Mr. Speaker. His first run for president in 2005, again in 2011 as Winston Tubman's vice presidential candidate, but lost to Ellen Selen Johnson on both occasions. After these unsuccessful attempts, Mr. Speaker, at becoming elected as president and vice president, Weah won the first round in the presidential election in October with 38.4% of the vote, compared with 28.8% won by second place Mr. Boakai, the then vice president. The failure of any candidate to secure an outright majority forced a round of which was delayed due to a legal challenge by a representative of the Liberty Party, Charles Bromsky. The Supreme Court eventually ruled against the challenge, and President Weah came out as first in the 26 December 2017 presidential runoff after securing 61.5% of recorded votes cast against his opponent, Mr. J. Boakai, who secured 38.5% of the votes. Mr. Speaker, President Weah's election and subsequent inauguration along Mrs. Joel Howard Taylor is a remarkable achievement and has sparked off a lot of hope among Liberia's teeming youth and market women, who voted massively for him in all but one of Liberia's 15 counties. It is also evident of the country's tenacity in forging peace and stability, especially post the UN mission's exit, as well as the desire of Liberians to chart a path of growth and prosperity. The transition of power from the government of Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to President Weah marks the first time power has been handed over between two democratically elected presidents in the 47 years in Liberia. President Weah is well known for his extraordinary career as a footballer, President Weah was named 3 times as the African Footballer of the Year in 1989, 1994, and 1995. He stands out as the only African to have won the Golden Ball Award for the best European footballer and the FIFA World Player in 1995. He also won FIFA's Fair Play Award in 1996. In Liberia, President Weah founded the Junior Professionals, a football team in Monrovia in 1994, which he used to encourage young people to remain in school. He coached the Liberian national football team as well. Before attaining the limelight on the global stage, President Weah, who was born in October 1966, grew up in Monrovia. He became a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador in April 1997, and he was instrumental in publicizing immunization, supporting HIV education campaigns, among other projects in Ghana and Liberia. Mr. Speaker, in 2004, President Weah received the prestigious Atta-Ash Courage Award for his work on behalf of children affected by war. Prior to his election as the President of Liberia, President Weah was an elected senator of the Parliament of Liberia and the head of the delegation of the Liberian Parliament to the ECOWAS Community Parliament. Being an international soccer star, Mr. Speaker, President Weah once again made history in the stadium. He is cheered on once again by crowds of supporters, though not to take a rest after a hard-won battle, rather cheers to urge him on to consolidate peace and security of his country while working to achieve greater prosperity for the Liberian people. In his inaugural speech, Mr. Speaker, President Weah promised the Liberian people that he will not let them down and will ensure that their resources do not end up in the pockets of government officials. That perhaps sums up the extent of corruption issues in Liberia, which the previous government had been accused of not doing enough to stem up. In a country where more than half of Liberians live in poverty, with huge unemployment and youthful population, the president has his hard cut out for him and may well need a magic wand to fulfill expectations of not only his supporters, but Liberians in general, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, President Weah's critics have argued that his lack of political experience, and despite having been elected as a senator, he has not inspired confidence in political leadership. President Weah, however, insists that his responsibility has been to talk to his people and to discuss their interests, which the records at Parliament indicates. Having finally gotten the job, he now has a chance to put his critics wrong, Mr. Speaker. The whole world will be watching to see how a former footballer is able to convert a poor economy into a prosperous one. Africa, West Africa and Ghana must stand with Liberia and President Weah to ensure that Liberia continues to enjoy peace and stability for the benefit of her people and humanity. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Member for North Tongue.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. May I express my debt of gratitude to you for the opportunity to make this statement in honor of the historic democratic transition in Liberia and the highly commendable role of Ghana in supporting Liberia all the way in what has been an arduous, tortuous, and eventful journey. Mr. Speaker, a few days ago, Liberia, the country established by freed American slaves in 1847, experienced its first democratic transition since 1944, when Africa's first female president and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of the Unity Party, UP, handed over to the only African to win FIFA's World Player of the Year in 1995 and former Senator, His Excellency George Tolon Mana Opong Osman Weah of the Congress for Democratic Change, CDC. Mr. Speaker, the special invitations extended to Ghana's current president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and Ghana's two former presidents, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings and His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to the auspicious inauguration ceremony is ample testimony of the very high regard and deep sense of appreciation that Liberia has for Ghana. As it is well known, during the two brutal civil wars in Liberia, described as Africa's bloodiest conflict, Ghana did not opt to play the role of a disinterested bystander. Our gallant Ghanaian troops, led by General Arnold Quenu, as part of an ECOMOG mission, comprising some 4,000 troops, which also has support from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and Guinea, did their very best to save lives and restore normalcy when the first civil war between 1989 and 1997 raged on, tragically claiming some 200,000 lives, which included an estimated 14,000 Ghanaians living in Liberia at the time and displacing more than 1 million Liberians. Charles Taylor of the National Patriotic Front of Liberia battled against Prince Johnson's Independent National Patriotic Front of Liberia over the control of the capital Monrovia, with Prince Johnson eventually savagely torturing, dismembering, and executing President Samuel Doe in September 1990 under full video coverage. Mr. Speaker, as we do know, this development further exacerbated the conflict, leading to infuriated loyalists of President Samuel Doe and the armed forces of Liberia in June 1991, forming the United Liberation Movement of Liberia for Democracy, ULIMO, led by Rele Seki. ULIMO was later to split under two militias by 1994, ULIMO J, an ethnic Kran faction led by General Roosevelt Johnson, and ULIMO K, a Madingo-based faction led by Alhaji G. V. Kroma. Mr. Speaker, by 1994, humanitarian conditions had fast deteriorated, with an estimated 1.8 million Liberians left in dire need of humanitarian assistance in difficult-to-reach territories in Liberia. The unconscionable specter of child soldiers had begun to emerge. Large deposits of diamond had been dissipated in funding and the purchase of weapons of war. Mass rape, maiming, and torture was occurring on a daily basis. And even more worrying was the spread of the conflict to Sierra Leone and Guinea, threatening to destabilize the entire sub-region. After several failed peace agreements, Ghana did not give up, as we are all fondly remembered, for the September 1994 Akosombo Agreement, a supplement to the Cotonou Agreement signed by factional leaders, which was to be followed by the Accra Agreement in December that same year. Mr. Speaker, in August 1995, President Jerry John Rawlings famously brokered an agreement signed by the warring factions, and at a conference sponsored by ECOWAS, the United Nations, the United States, the European Union, and the Organization of African Unity, as it was known at the time, Charles Taylor agreed to a ceasefire and a timetable to demobilize and disarm his troops. The Rawlings brokered agreement contributed greatly to the eventual ceasefire and the conduct of the July 1997 elections, which was won by Charles Taylor. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the newly found peace, albeit fragile, was rather short-lived, and in just 2 years, Liberia returned to civil war. The Liberian Second Civil War claimed another 50,000 lives, lasting 4 agonizing years from 1999 to 2003. Mr. Speaker, here again, Ghana did not show exasperation. Neither did we abandon our good friends. President John Ajekun Kufuor rose to the occasion and negotiated what became known as the historic Accra Comprehensive Peace Agreement. The Kufuor Agreement was signed by the warring parties on August 18, 2003, marking the political end of the conflict and beginning Liberia's transition to democracy under the National Transitional Government of Liberia, which was led by interim President Guy Brandt, until the refreshing Liberian general election of 2005, which was won by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Mr. Speaker, apart from the wise counsel, solidarity, and tenacious leadership of Ghanaian presidents, the brave and legendary sacrifices of Ghanaian troops, it is worth highlighting that the Ghanaian people once again showcased that rare attribute of what has become known as a quintessential Ghanaian hospitality, when we welcomed and warmly embraced Liberian refugees into our ranks. Ghana agreed for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to establish the Budumburam refugee camp, where some 12,000 Liberians were hosted. Indeed, a good number of Liberians, including the current president, His Excellency George Weah, have since made Ghana their second home. Mr. Speaker, we have not stood by Liberia only in times of war. We have been there for them when calamities struck, even in times of peace. As the deadly Ebola virus epidemic ravaged through Africa in 2014, with Liberia being the most susceptible, at least 4,809 Liberians reportedly lost their lives, with another 10,675 contracting the virus. Ghana again came to the rescue. Under the dynamic and compassionate leadership of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, Ghana offered to serve as the hub for the United Nations relief effort to assist affected countries such as Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Nigeria, Mali, Senegal, and DR Congo, at a time most countries refused to take the risk. After an impassionate UN General Assembly address calling for global support, President Mahama exhibited hands-on inspiring leadership by personally visiting affected countries, including Liberia, sending relief items, medical supplies, and cash from the good people of Ghana. He also deployed experts and medical practitioners to help eradicate the disease in Liberia, which in 2014, when the disease broke out, had only 50 doctors, serving a population of 4.3 million with a very weak health system. Mr. Speaker, I am not unaware of several Ghanaian educational institutions that have assisted in building capacity of Liberian leaders and professionals across the board. Same can be said of other Ghanaian institutions, including this August House of Parliament and civil society groups, for their worthy contributions in helping rebuild that nation. We do also know the role our Electoral Commission played in strengthening Liberia's electoral capacity over the years, not forgetting the latest support from celebrated former Ghanaian Electoral Commissioner Dr. Kwejo Afarijan, following the Liberia Supreme Court's directive on the need for the country's Electoral Commission to improve its capacity ahead of the second-round election. As an icing on the cake, it was heartwarming to see former President John Mahama and former Foreign Minister Hannah Tete dedicate their time and energy in observing the Liberian polls and helping alongside others to get things done right and credibly. Mr. Speaker, on this occasion of Liberia's historic democratic transition, and for a country that has been through so much, for a country that has seen and experienced the true character of Ghana, we can only at this juncture congratulate them and extend our very best wishes to both former President Sirleaf and President Weah. President Weah has demonstrated exemplary love for his country, and we know he means well. It is our prayer that he will excel with statecraft, just as he excelled on the football pitch. May his prodigious story inspire many African youth to dream, to believe in themselves, never to give up, and to have hope in the abundant possibilities in our continent. Mr. Speaker, often we are hard on ourselves as a country, refusing to see the many areas we have served as a beacon of hope to others and the inspiration we have offered other nations. Yes, we remain a country with many challenges, like many other nations, even of the developed status. However, in times like this, let us be proud of our collective achievements as a people in making our continent and humanity a better place, and let this spur us on to carry out greater and nobler works at home and abroad. God bless our republic. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, now I have two statements, one commending Liberia and urging the president. The other one, which was supposed to be complimentary, appears to be eulogizing Ghana instead. I'm not sure what it is. Very well. Now I invite members to comment. Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs, I'll give you the last word. Right. Honourable Beja.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and also to thank my colleagues who have made a statement in commemorating the Liberian administration that has been sworn in just last Monday. Mr. Speaker, I was there at the invitation of the Ambassador George Oponwia, Senator, and also His Excellency. Mr. Speaker, I saw a T-shirt that was written at the back of one of the CDC, that's the party's supporters. And on that T-shirt, I saw an inscription written, "We are." And "we are" there means world best, European best, African best, and His Excellency the President. And I asked myself, how did he get this inscription? And it dawned on me, as Ambassador Weah was reading his statement, he mentioned that he has struggled over the years with his people. And indeed, those who did not support him said that he's not educated. He couldn't have been the president because he's not well educated. Mr. Speaker, somebody who has played football and became the world best, somebody who has also been an African best, European best, as well as now transiting to become a president, shows clearly that when you are determined in life, you can make it. Somebody who was just picked from the street of Monrovia playing football, and today has become the president of a country. That alone taught me a lesson. I saw the youth at the stadium, Mr. Speaker, jubilating with some energy. And Mr. Speaker, I asked myself, this energy, if we can turn this energy into something better, Liberia will become the Liberia that we all know. And I advised some of the close friends of his that let us turn the energy of the youth in Liberia into something productive, so that Liberia will not slip back into war again. Mr. Speaker, we are experiencing similar situation now in Kenya, where as we speak now, another fashion is being sworn in as a president. So if you are not careful, we'll have two presidents in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, Raila Odinga is being sworn in by his party people, whilst the elected president has already been sworn in. George Oponwia started his political career. He did not win. He thought he won, but since Electoral Commission has declared a winner, he gave up. Then the second time, he became a running mate. That one too, they lost the election. He waited till this time that he has been declared. Even at the first round, he wasn't declared winner until they went for the runoff. Can we African politicians admit that when it says that you did not win, you wait for your turn? George has shown the way, and I believe other politicians should also learn from this, just as His Excellency Akufo-Addo has also done in Ghana here. Let politicians learn. Let people learn that you wait for your time. When your time is right, you will be given the nod. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I want all Ghanaians, especially the business community in Ghana, to take advantage of Liberia, just as we accommodated them when the war broke out. We supported them, and also when Ebola issue came up, we gave them our supporting hand. We want our colleagues, our brothers who are who are financially endowed, who are in the business field, to take advantage of this green land, to make Liberia once again a country that we all share values, culture, and friendship with. With this word, Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Honourable Member for Ladadekotopong, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to add my voice to this George Weah's phenomenon, especially as Mr. Speaker, the ascension and the rise of George Weah to the presidency of Liberia is an attestation of the spirit of the human spirit, and what has become proverbially to be known as a can-do spirit. Mr. Speaker, a lot of people are not aware that when George Weah was scouted by Coach Claude Lira and was recommended to Coach Arsene Wenger,
George Weah was considered as overweight who could not play football. When you read the history and the records that Asamoah gave about George Weah, I tell you that in the first years that George Weah was in France, he was asked to do extra training apart from the whole team before he could even be admitted and be given a chance to play. George Weah had to train on his own in the evenings after the whole team has finished training for him to lose the weight. He had to go through specialized training because Asamoah claimed that he saw in him a rough diamond and thought that if George Weah could push himself and be able to put in the extra work, he could be transformed into the finished article that we saw in AC Milan and Chelsea, and he been nominated as the world best player sometime in 1995. Mr. Speaker, coming to his political life, George Weah, as my colleague Honorable Beja has said, had to endure a lot of humiliation in his first attempt. He's been labeled as uneducated. He educated himself after football through all the various levels to the university. What this shows, Mr. Speaker, today is that His Excellency the President's mantra that Ghana could be built as a country beyond aid, and that we could initiate and start our own Ghanaian, a new Ghanaian civilization is possible. Mr. Speaker, George Weah's show of character, tenacity, determination shows that wherever there's a will, there's always a way. And that this country could be transformed to be one of the best in the world. Mr. Speaker, if we consider the kind of policies that His Excellency the President and the MPP government has put in place since January last year, shows that if we put our mind to it, if we are committed with a plan, with determination, with the right kind of leadership, with the right kind of people, we could uplift our citizenry into a developed country where we will be counted and respected, and leaders, no matter how we depend on them, will not refer to us as shitholes, if pardon my language, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we must get our children to learn the example of George Weah. We must get our children to be determined that with determination and with discipline, they'll be able to achieve their potential. What George Weah has done must inspire us, Mr. Speaker. What George Weah has done must be a shining light and an example to whoever says that it cannot be done, because it is everything is possible. With these few words, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
They hardly speak, so I'll give you that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is wonderful to observe the significant things being said about Liberia, Ghana's contribution to that country, and especially His Excellency, Mr. George Weah's now high ascendancy to the office of President of his country. A few years ago, we would look back and think Liberia is a failed state because of the things that happened. They blew up their own power sources, and everything was just broken in that country. And as was eloquently elucidated, they had to come to our country to seek refuge. And so, probably, one would have just said, what can come out of Nazareth, a country that is broken as such? But then we get a world figure when we have the league of the Hall of Fame of all individuals who have excelled in soccer. We can talk of Mr. George Weah. But not only that,
he has actually ascended to the high office of president of his country. Looking at where he is now and where his country is seeking to be, it is significant to draw some important implications from his work. First, he stood as the president of the country, and what happened? He lost, but he learned to stand in line. In Africa, we've had a bad experience of people who ordinarily, when they lose, they take the gun as the next line of action. And it has happened in his own country. George Weah was not like that. Then we see in his efforts also the attempt of being ready. When he stood as a presidential candidate in the first instance, in fact, he didn't have a high school diploma. He didn't have a high school diploma. And he went on, when he was challenged, he went to get his high school diploma, he got a bachelor's degree, he got a master's degree. This is somebody who is disadvantaged, coming from the slums of Liberia. But when the opportunity was open to him, he worked hard, he stood in line, and it was his turn for him to turn things around. But we also see in what he has done, the sense of reputation and what you do with your reputation. In a lot of our countries and our societies, if a person didn't pursue an academic route and he became a football player, more than likely the observation is that he's failed, he's lost out. So if he becomes a soccer player, he makes money, he buys big cars, and he ride around with some of his opposite sex, and that's about all the thinking of society. Here is a young man who has made money. He has been on the world scene, and we see someone who was disadvantaged climbing up by himself. This is a self-made person. Look at the reference to the fact that he was overweight, and therefore he couldn't even do anything. It means in Africa we can do something about our situations, and that if Hakeem Olajuwon went to America, he didn't know how to play basketball. He went there to play soccer. He showed up there, he couldn't play soccer. The school didn't have a soccer team. He turned around to become a star basketball player, playing for the San Antonio Rockets, and he excelled all over. So, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing changes in how we think that we are fixed in life, and that if you are poor forever. We are seeing in George Weah, if it is paying attention, if it is dedicating himself to education, if it is dedicating himself to the sports, which he had intrinsic interest, all of that he pursued with excellence. So essentially, we see in this emerging individual, now the president of his country, the integration of proper emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and cognitive intelligence. And that if a person took a route other than academics, it means he has not failed. It means they can also polish and do something. But the big picture we are seeing here is even the essence of democracy. And that a person of his stature could have just been condemned and said, he doesn't belong to the class. But here, in an open society, he could aspire to the high office of president when he didn't have a high school diploma. And today, he has worked his way up. So we celebrate His Excellency, Mr. George Weah, but it's an inspiration to our youth that, in fact, you are not fixed in life, and that even where you are disadvantaged enormously, structures are in place in the society, and if you take advantage of it, you can get as far as you can. The sky is the limit. With these few words, Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much, and I thank you very much. Okay.
Very well. Right, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to the statement on the floor. Mr. Speaker, the election of His Excellency George Oppong-Weah as the President of Liberia has been described by many, including our own President, His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, as an extremely important development in Liberia's history and in West Africa. The election is Liberia's first transition between democratically elected leaders
since 1994. Mr. Speaker, the entire election is a clear demonstration of how democracy is gradually getting stronger and entrenched in the body politic in West Africa. Mr. Speaker, the beauty of democracy was also shown in how the inauguration witnessed the participation of most past and present heads of state, including our own former President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and His Excellency John Jel Rawlings, and our sitting President, His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. Mr. Speaker, the Liberian president's election is a clear sign of hope to everyone in that hard work, perseverance, determination pays. Mr. Speaker, as a former international football legend, George Okonjo replaces Africa's first elected female head of state, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. This is feather in the cap of Africa in terms of democracy. Mr. Speaker, we have a large community of Ghanaians who are law-abiding in Liberia. We also have Ghanaian troops serving with the UN mission in Liberia, UNAMIL. These men and women of Ghana Army Forces have distinguished themselves and continuously demonstrate high degree of professionalism, courage, and commitment to Liberia's peacekeeping. These men and women also deserve our commendation because they have stood firm in the execution of their UN mandate, even in the face of deadly Ebola viral disease, which had claimed thousands of lives. Mr. Speaker, may I once again thank you for the opportunity whilst praying for longer working relations between Ghana and Liberia. Thank you.
Minority leadership. Very well. Majority leadership.
The Speaker, thank you. The Speaker, just to add a few words. The election of George Weah should excite and indeed give pride to all of us in Africa. Speaker, the point has been made by the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs that the success story of George Weah in itself is a pointer to hard work, tenacity of purpose, and indeed perseverance. The Speaker, when he first contested against the president who just exited, Sirleaf Johnson, the Speaker, it was said of him at the time that he wasn't literate enough, in spite of his own popularity. He reclined and decided to pursue education in order to enhance his own abilities. Speaker, the first 4 years, when he was not successful, he decided to pursue a degree course. In the first 4 years, he had his first degree. After the second attempt, where he again was not successful, he decided to continue his education. And before the recent elections, he had been awarded a second degree, a master's degree. A footballer who had struggled. Mr. Speaker, here is a person who demonstrated leadership even before he entered the fray of politics. There was an occasion when Ghana had to play Liberia in a qualifying match for the Africa Nations Cup. Liberia at the time was engulfed in civil war, and the team could not be provided with the wherewithal by the country to come and play Ghana. Single-handedly, he purchased the tickets of all the team members, including officials, and brought them to Ghana. That was when Ghana recognized the proficiency of George Weah. We all thought we were going to humiliate Liberia. And when they couldn't afford, that's the second leg. The first leg was played elsewhere. The second leg, we brought them. We went and airlifted them to Accra Sports Stadium. And led by George Weah, they came here and defeated us. That was when George Weah registered strongly on the radar of Ghana. People then realized that he was a very proficient player. The Speaker, on at least 7 occasions, he had to bear the expenditure of airlifting his team, going elsewhere to train, bearing the cost, feeding, hotel accommodation, everything, single-handedly. What patriotism. And yet, when he came to politics, he was found to be wanting. People felt that, yes, in spite of his enthusiasm, it may not translate into political leadership, which is why he decided on those unsuccessful occasions to help himself. So here we have somebody who has really pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. As far as football is concerned, one person that he must also be grateful to eternally is the current coach of Arsenal, Arsene Wenger. It was who discovered him and then had him sent to France for some tutelage for 3 years before he brought him. The Speaker, George Weah has done Africa proud as a footballer, becoming the first player in Africa to be crowned the best player in Africa, and at the same time winning the European best footballer, same year, and the same year winning the world's best. Indeed, the previous year he should have been crowned the world's best, but for the fact that his team, his club, AC Milan, missed out. And then he was adjudged the second best. If AC Milan had won, they have been the first African to have won the world best on 2 occasions at least. So, Speaker, into the electioneering campaign, the first time he contested against the woman, the ECOWAS Parliament, to which I belonged at the time, asked me to lead the delegation from the ECOWAS Parliament to the place. Mr. Speaker, when I went there and witnessed their electioneering campaign, 3 days before the elections, what I witnessed, I realized even at that time, couldn't have happened in Ghana. The penultimate day, the anti-penultimate day, I should say, to the elections, he had his own final rally in Monrovia. And the lady also had her final rally in Monrovia. There's just one principal road in Monrovia. And the two, it's a dual carriageway. The two parties were using different sides of the roads. And when they got together, they were pelting themselves with sachet water. And everybody was laughing. It couldn't have happened between NDC and PP in Accra. I'm saying so. Mr. Speaker, the police wouldn't even have allowed it in the first place. To have demonstrations leading to the election ground, side by side. And we are leading his own team, his own party people. And when he was being taunted as an illiterate footballer, he made a V sign that in spite of that, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. Mr. Speaker, it was a scene to behold. And I believe all of us should have useful lessons. Mr. Speaker, Liberia has a Herculean task. One can only hope and pray that is able to put together a very good team to assist him. What he has achieved, given his own spirit of endurance and perseverance, I believe, and of course, given the goodwill that he has, I believe he will be able to overcome. The transition was very smooth. It was devoid of acrimony, and one can only wish him the best and wish the people of Liberia success under George Weah. And let me say that even though Opong is not part of his official name, he derived the name Opong from a Ghanaian footballer who migrated to Liberia. He used to be a Kotowa player called Charles Opong. He went and played there. And Weah came under the tutelage of Charles Opong. That is how come he adopted his name. And he became Opong Weah. So he has learned from Ghana. And Ghana, assisting Liberia, is being something perhaps that as sister nations we have had to live with. It explains why when they had trouble, they jumped over La Côte d'Ivoire and came to Ghana. Even though the contiguous country is La Côte d'Ivoire, but they all came to Ghana and they didn't stay in La Côte d'Ivoire. Let that good relationship between Ghana and Liberia continue. If there is anything that as a country we can do to assist them, I believe we should make it ready in order for them to be able to bounce back as they used to be in the 60s and 70s. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the space granted.
Very well, honorable members. That brings us to the end of private business. Now we will go to public business. At the commencement of public business, item number 4, motion. Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee.
Speaker, the committee members have given an indication to us that we should stand these motions down, that is both 4 and 5. We should stand them down until further work has been done on their reports. Speaker.
Very well. In the circumstance, Majority Leader will be guided by...
Speaker, we have programmed to have a joint caucus meeting, and I believe the time should be right for us to take an adjournment in order for us to be able to have the joint caucus meeting, which is going to deal with very important matters. Speaker, thank you. And if that should find favor with you, Mr. Speaker, I may want to move that this House adjourns until tomorrow, the 31st day of January, at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. I shall move.
Honorable Minority Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I ought to draw the attention of the clerk to some anomaly before I do the second. When you look at the other paper, it was also, the provisional was also reading Tuesday, 30th January. So the member was expecting to ask his question until I said no. I think it's the date probably which is wrong. So I think our clerks should watch some of these things. Mr. Speaker, because of the committee meetings, I will want to second, but plead with Majority Leader and the House, where it was possible. The Committee on Constitutional and Legal and Parliamentary Affairs is going to consider the petition from the Association of Law Students of Ghana, praying Parliament to annul the legal profession regulation. Mr. Speaker, currently, this is before the subsidiary legislation. When the referral was going to be made, it was made to only constitutional and legal. Meanwhile, the subsidiary legislation is considering it. I wanted to plead, if it were possible for us to do an amendment to join the subsidiary, since they are already considering the regulation currently, so that at least the work will be one, instead of constitutional and legal doing it separately, and subsidiary legislation also considering the regulation separately. I don't know whether it is possible at this stage to be able to do that and add the subsidiary to constitutional to be able to do that. Other than that, I second the motion for adjournment.
Honourable Majority Leader, your motion still stands. Before seconding the motion, he's introducing a new subject. But I think that there's nothing wrong with the Committee on Subsidiary Legislation joining in participating in the consideration of the petition, so that if they find that there's anything in the competition that would influence their consideration, they could do so. But at this stage, I think that I take it that the motion has been moved and seconded, and I'll put the question. And the question is, yes, Honourable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the issue raised by the Chief Whip for the minority. I think what really happened in that case was that the petition was specific. They directed it to that committee. And so the committee then assumed ownership of the petition. I think you are right, because already the instrument is before the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. The two of them could consider it jointly, and if it has to affect the work of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee, then they would consider it at the same time. And perhaps they may even need some advice from the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, except of course to observe that the two committees are populated by almost the same faces and the same people, but a few exceptions do. So they could profit if they work together on that referral to the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. And whilst we are at the business of exactitude, maybe to also observe that there is a Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, not a constitutional committee. A few issues. So maybe the table office would direct your people to look at these things in a better way. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Very well. I'll put the question now. Honourable members, the question is, all in favor of the motion for adjournment say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The House is adjourned until tomorrow, the 31st of January at 10 in the forenoon. Our members are informed that as soon as we adjourn, there's a committee of the whole meeting. All members should remain and be part. A joint caucus meeting. All members are encouraged to stay and take part.